It was a quiet September night in Laredo, Texas. Inside a small family home, two children slept peacefully while their parents sat behind a closed door, trying to have one last talk about their troubled marriage. A few hours later, the calm was broken by the sound of sirens racing through the neighborhood. Paramedics arrived to find a young mother barely clinging to life. Her husband's story about what had happened didn't seem to make sense, and the more police looked into it, the more the truth began to twist and turn. What unfolded inside that bedroom would soon expose a web of lies, heartbreak, and unanswered questions. Now, let's get into today's story. Maria Munoz was born on January 25, 1989, in Puerto Rico. She grew up as one of three children in a lively, close-knit family raised by Marisol Rodriguez and Jorge Luis Munoz. The Munoz household was filled with laughter, warmth, and a strong sense of togetherness that everyone around them admired. But as Maria entered adulthood, her life took a sharp turn. Around the time she lost her mother, Marisol, she met Joel, the man who would later become her husband. Still very young, Maria suddenly found herself taking on new responsibilities, not only as Joel's partner, but also as a guiding figure for her younger siblings. As they all tried to heal from their loss, Maria and Joel first met in nursing school back in Puerto Rico, where they were both students. Joel was 11 years older, but that never seemed to matter. They bonded quickly, sharing similar dreams of building a better future in the United States and starting a family together. Their romance moved quickly. After getting married, they soon welcomed two sons into their lives. Hoping for new opportunities, they decided to move to Laredo, Texas, a city near the Mexican border. In Laredo, Joel landed a well-paid job as a nurse anesthetist. His work was demanding and required intense focus, precision, and stamina. Meanwhile, Maria devoted herself to raising their children and managing the household, determined to give her family the sense of stability she'd always wanted. From the outside, Maria seemed to have it all: a steady marriage, two beautiful children, and a safe home in a new country. But behind that picture-perfect life, things were beginning to fall apart. Joel's behavior started to change. He became increasingly obsessed with his appearance, spending long hours at the gym and becoming fixated on losing weight. What began as a fitness routine soon escalated. Joel began using steroids to speed up his progress, and as his body transformed, so did his personality. He grew distant, more focused on himself than on his family. His social media pages changed too. Family photos vanished, replaced by images of his new muscular physique, his sports car, and a showy lifestyle that seemed to revolve around him alone. At first, Maria brushed it off as a phase. But as time went on, her concern deepened. The man she once knew was slowly disappearing, replaced by someone she could barely recognize. The truth would eventually come out. Joel had been having an affair with a coworker named Janet Arredondo, while Maria stayed home to care for their children. Joel was secretly spending his time with another woman. Their relationship escalated quickly. Before long, Joel and Janet were taking trips together, even traveling to Europe. When Maria discovered the truth, it shattered her world. She fell into a deep depression, unsure how to move forward or rebuild her life. In those dark moments, Maria turned to her faith. She poured her heart out in her journal, writing about her pain and confusion. Her entries revealed a woman torn between her emotions and her faith, haunted by the past and struggling to endure the present. In her words, she prayed for peace, for strength, and for her heart to stop hurting. Religion became her anchor, the one thing she could still hold on to when everything else felt lost. Despite the heartbreak, Maria still believed her marriage could be saved. She decided to give Joel another chance. From the outside, it seemed like he regretted his actions. He appeared to be making an effort, spending more time with the children, joining family trips, and showing signs of reconciliation. For Maria, those moments gave her hope that the life she had fought for might still be restored. But beneath that fragile peace, the truth remained unchanged. Joel had never ended his affair with Janet. Months later, Maria discovered undeniable proof. One day, while driving through a neighborhood, she spotted Joel's car parked in front of a house she didn't recognize. Her instincts told her something was wrong. She stopped, knocked on the door, and found exactly what she feared. Joel was inside with his mistress. A nearby security camera captured the tense moment. Joel looked startled as Maria confronted him. When she finally walked away, he returned to his car, furious, and slammed his fist against the window. The next day, Maria made a decision. She texted Joel, saying she wanted to meet with a divorce lawyer. Joel pushed back, insisting they could handle everything privately and avoid legal costs. But only a few hours later, he sent her another message, one filled with remorse. He said he wanted to meet in person for an honest talk about their future. Maria, emotionally exhausted yet still clinging to a small hope for her children's sake, agreed to see him. On the evening of September 21st, 2020, Maria returned to their home in Laredo, Texas. The plan was to discuss their separation, custody of the children, and how to divide their property. Earlier that day, she had messaged her best friend, admitting her fear and anxiety. "Please pray for me," she wrote. "We're having a conversation tonight." That would be the last time anyone outside the house heard from her. The next night, September 22nd, police in Laredo received a frantic 911 call. Joel's voice came through the line, panicked. He claimed that his wife might have taken too many pills. When paramedics arrived, they found Maria unresponsive. Joel told them the two had been intimate earlier that evening, and later he found her unconscious on the floor. He said she must have overdosed on medication. But something about the scene didn't add up. The pills Joel mentioned weren't prescribed to Maria, they were his. And strangely, the packaging was nowhere near her body. Joel told police he had brought the pills from another part of the house. He also claimed that after being with Maria, he took a shower, yet investigators found the shower completely dry. The details didn't add up, and detectives grew uneasy. Then came another strange move. Joel refused to let officers search the home, saying he wanted to protect his privacy. To investigators, that refusal only deepened their suspicion. At 3:58 a.m., after nearly 2 hours of trying to save her, paramedics stopped their efforts. 31-year-old Maria Munoz was pronounced dead at the scene. Her 2 children, who had witnessed the chaos of that night, were taken in by police until a close friend could care for them. The sudden death of a healthy young woman demanded answers. And Joel's odd behavior, contradictions, and lack of cooperation made him the immediate focus of the investigation. Within an hour of Maria's death, Joel was sitting in an interrogation room at the Laredo police station. The tension in the room was clear. A camera recorded him shouting, kicking furniture, and losing control. Whether his anger came from grief or from pressure, detectives couldn't yet tell. When asked about the prescription drugs found in the house, Joel's story kept changing. He couldn't say how many clonazepam pills had been in the bottle or how many Maria might have taken. Each time he spoke, his version of events shifted slightly, and each shift made detectives trust him less. Eventually, the questioning turned to his marriage. Joel hesitated, then admitted to having an affair with a co-worker, Janet Ardondo. A few hours later, Janet herself was brought in. She confirmed the affair, but denied knowing anything about Maria using pills or other substances. When investigators informed her that Maria had died the night before, they reminded her that the autopsy results were still pending, and that no crime had yet been confirmed. Janet revealed something else. The affair hadn't been brief. It had been going on for years. She said Joel often described his wife as depressed and unstable, a narrative that investigators suspected was meant to make Maria look responsible for her own death and deflect blame from him. Still, without the toxicology report, police couldn't move the case forward. When Maria's funeral was held, grief mixed with unease. Friends and family were stunned by Joel's behavior. He had claimed to love his wife deeply, yet only days after her death, he was living with Janet. To those who knew Maria, nothing about Joel's actions made sense. For months, uncertainty lingered. No one knew for sure what had really happened that night. Had Maria taken her own life? Was it an accident? Or had Joel done something far worse? When the toxicology results finally arrived, they changed everything. The drugs Joel claimed Maria had overdosed on weren't in her system at all. Instead, traces of other substances were found, the kind typically used by anesthesiologists. That revelation flipped the entire investigation. Months after Maria's death, Joel Munoz was arrested. He showed little reaction as police took him into custody, as if he already knew his fate. Detectives ruled out suicide and began piecing together a much darker picture. Evidence showed Maria had been documenting her pain long before that night. Her journals revealed details of Joel's infidelity, manipulation, and emotional abuse. She had even recorded arguments, as though she sensed her words might one day tell her story for her. On the very day she planned to meet Joel to talk about their separation, Maria made one last diary entry, filled with hope that things could be resolved peacefully. To investigators, Maria's final journal entry made one thing clear. She had no intention of ending her own life. Instead, detectives began to suspect that Joel had used their planned meeting as a setup. They believed that once Maria was vulnerable, perhaps even unconscious, he administered a deadly injection. Forensic experts would later confirm their fears. Tests revealed a massive amount of propofol in Maria's system, a powerful anesthetic drug usually reserved for surgeries. The dose she received was so high it could have been used in two separate operations. Even more telling was the discovery of a small puncture mark on her arm. What at first appeared to be a tragic overdose was now being seen as something much darker, a calculated murder. When confronted, Joel tried to explain the needle marks, claiming they were his own, left from steroid injections. Investigators didn't buy it. They suspected that the very syringe he described was the same one used to end Maria's life, although there wasn't direct proof that Joel had stolen the drugs from the hospital where he worked. All signs pointed in his direction. And then, a major break came in the case. Janet Ardondo, Joel's mistress and co-worker, agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. In exchange for her testimony, any potential charges against her were dropped. What she revealed confirmed many of investigators' suspicions. According to Janet, Joel had taken medication from the hospital on more than one occasion. She even admitted that he had once injected Maria himself, claiming it was just a sedative meant to calm her down. During one of what he described as her emotional episodes, Janet also said Joel had tried to get rid of the used needles afterward, an act that only reinforced detectives' belief that Maria's death had been carefully planned. When the case finally went to trial, Joel's defense team told a completely different story. They argued that Joel never meant to harm his wife, that he had been trying to save her. His lawyers painted Maria as deeply troubled, suggesting she struggled with depression and had grown dependent on prescription pills. They claimed that when Joel found her unconscious, he gave her naloxone, a drug used to reverse opioid overdoses. They pointed to traces of naloxone found in her system as evidence of his attempt to revive her. But the medical findings didn't support that version at all. Forensic experts confirmed that Maria had no opioids in her system, no fentanyl, no heroin, no painkillers of any kind. More importantly, naloxone would have done nothing to counteract propofol, the anesthetic found in lethal quantities in her blood. The autopsy told a devastating story. Maria had been given an extremely high dose of propofol, far beyond anything used in medical treatment, and enough to guarantee her death. Investigators concluded that Joel had mixed the drugs intentionally to create a deadly combination, then administered a second injection to make sure she wouldn't survive. Throughout the trial, Joel refused to take the stand. He continued to insist that Maria had overdosed on her own, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Prosecutors argued that his real motive was money. With a divorce approaching, Joel faced losing part of his assets, his home, and the legal fees he had often complained about. Text messages between the couple revealed his frustration about not wanting to waste money on lawyers. The prosecution argued that greed and the fear of losing control over his finances and image had driven him to murder. When Janet took the stand, she admitted that her affair with Joel had begun in October 2018, shortly after the birth of his second son, Valentino. Though she knew he was married, she continued the relationship, joining Joel on expensive trips through Spain, Greece, and France the following year. Detectives quickly realized that nothing about Maria's death suggested she wanted to harm herself. Instead, they began to believe that her husband, Joel, had carefully set a trap. Investigators theorized that once Maria was defenseless, perhaps even unconscious, Joel gave her a fatal injection. Forensic tests later confirmed their suspicions. Maria's body contained a massive amount of propofol, a powerful hospital anesthetic. The dose was so high it could have been used in two separate surgeries. A small puncture mark on her arm told its own story. What was first thought to be a tragic overdose now appeared to be something far darker, a calculated act of murder. When questioned, Joel tried to explain away the evidence. He claimed the marks on Maria's arm were his, insisting they were from steroid shots he had given himself. Detectives didn't buy it. They believed that the same kind of needle he mentioned had actually been the weapon used to kill her. Though they couldn't prove Joel had stolen the propofol from the hospital, every new piece of evidence pointed to him. The case gained traction when one witness decided to talk, Joel's coworker and lover, Janet. In exchange for her cooperation, prosecutors agreed to drop the charges against her. Janet confirmed what detectives had long suspected. Joel had taken medical drugs from work more than once. She admitted that he had injected Maria before, claiming it was only a sedative to calm her down. She also confessed that Joel had tried to throw away the used syringes afterward, an act that deepened investigators' suspicions. When the trial began, Joel's defense team told a very different story. They said he hadn't meant to kill his wife, but had actually tried to save her. According to his lawyers, Maria struggled with depression and had become dependent on painkillers. They argued that when Joel found her unconscious, he injected her with naloxone, a drug used to reverse opioid overdoses. The defense pointed to traces of naloxone found during the autopsy as proof that Joel had tried to help. But medical experts disagreed. They found no opioids, no heroin, no fentanyl, nothing in Maria's system. Naloxone, they explained, would have done nothing to counteract propofol, the anesthetic that had killed her. Instead, the toxicology report showed extremely high levels of propofol, far beyond a safe dose. Investigators concluded that Joel had mixed multiple drugs to make sure Maria didn't survive and even gave an additional injection to finish the job. Throughout the trial, Joel refused to testify. He clung to the story that Maria had taken her own life. Prosecutors argued otherwise, saying his motive was simple, money. With divorce looming, Joel faced losing property, paying legal fees, and splitting assets he didn't want to share. In text messages, he complained about not wanting to spend money on lawyers. Prosecutors painted him as a man driven by greed and resentment. Janet became a key witness. She admitted that her affair with Joel began in late 2018. Shortly after his second child was born, she knew he was married, but that didn't stop her from traveling with him across Europe the following year. Though they occasionally discussed marriage, she said it was never serious. On the night Maria died, Janet testified that she was home. By the next morning, police had already contacted her about Maria's death, and Joel had moved in with her. Janet also told the court that Joel asked her to delete her home surveillance footage from that night. She confessed that she had stored medical drugs at home, supplied by Joel, which they both used recreationally. They had even injected each other for fun, treating dangerous hospital drugs like toys. The most chilling moment in her testimony came when she recalled a drive with Joel past a sewage site. She asked if that was where he had thrown away the 4 and vial from the night Maria died. Joel didn't give a clear answer. He only said that would have been a good idea. As the trial went on, experts helped reconstruct Maria's final months. Investigator Sable Miller reviewed Maria's personal journals, describing her as heartbroken but determined to rebuild her life. Nowhere in her writing did she mention suicidal thoughts. Instead, she seemed to be trying to move forward. Joel's defense attorney tried to argue that Maria's journals proved she was unstable, pointing to entries about her pain over Joel's affair. But one entry stood out. Maria wrote that she would never take anything from Joel, that everything she worked for was for her children. The medical examiner confirmed that Maria, a healthy 31-year-old, had died from a lethal mix of drugs. The official cause was ruled undetermined, but the evidence didn't fit with suicide. A forensic toxicologist testified that Maria had several powerful hospital-grade drugs in her system, including sedatives and painkillers. She had a large puncture wound on her arm, consistent with an 4-needle, something extremely difficult to do alone, especially for someone right-handed like Maria. There were no signs of drug abuse or addiction. As the sentencing phase began, Maria's friends and family spoke about her strength, her devotion to her children, and how hard she'd fought to rebuild her life after betrayal. Prosecutors demanded the maximum sentence, life in prison, while the defense pleaded for only 5 years. After 8 days of testimony, the jury reached its verdict. On March 30th, 2023, Joel was found guilty of murder and evidence tampering. He received a life sentence for killing his wife, plus an additional 10 years and a $10,000 fine. Maria's story ended with justice served. She wasn't a troubled woman seeking escape. She was a devoted mother trying to start over. And the man who took her life would spend the rest of his behind bars. Maria's own words became the most powerful evidence in court. The recordings of her arguments with Joel and the journals she kept so carefully painted a vivid picture of her final months. In the end, her voice, preserved through her notes and recordings, helped expose the truth. Maria Munoz was remembered as a devoted mother who tried to protect her children and rebuild her life. Her story is a haunting reminder that, no matter how long it takes, the truth always finds a way to surface, even in the darkest moments. Today, Maria's children are being cared for by their grandmother, growing up with the memory of a mother who loved them beyond measure. Her legacy lives on through her courage, her strength, and her determination to hold on to hope.